Here he is. 80, how you going, mate?
Oh yeah, Chow. How you doing, pal?
Yeah, good. Did you like the little video I put up there for you, mate?
Oh, interestingly enough, I was just reading it and I thought, actually, the remarkable amount of wisdom there, and actually hasn't aged at all, really, because it's like playing etiquette
Hmm.
is I think is really really important because you can be. I mean, I've played some complete arses in my time. Oh, I'll be honest about it. I really have. I played some absolute arses,
Hmm.
and a lot. Unfortunately, when I was working at Games Workshop, I didn't have a choice. I had to. In fact, you're playing people who were really complete dicks. If I was, if this person came up to me and said, "Would you fancy a game?" I go, "I'm not playing you for all the money. If you were the last person on this planet, I'd rather play a solo game against myself rather than play you, because just
Yeah.
because some people they're just, I mean, they don't understand the spirit of the game at all. I mean, but once again, my interpretation of the spirit of the game is often very different from other people's
Hmm.
intention. In what they think the spirit of the game is completely different. So
No,
anyway,
totally agree with you, mate. Honestly, because half of the game experience is your opponent, isn't it? I mean, that's
oh yeah,
half.
well, it has to be, and
Yeah.
it's. I've always been of the opinion that by the end of that battle, you should have a mate. You should have somebody who is going to want to go. That was awesome. Doesn't matter about the result. That was awesome. I really want to play you again, and I want to play you again regularly. And I was so unused to for example, the idea of going into a Games Workshop store and just picking someone random and just having a game with them, which apparently is more common than I imagined.
Hmm.
But it's like I can't, because I've always been someone who strove for having long time and long term opponents who you really get to know, and it kind of makes the whole experience better, and it means you can try stuff out and you can experiment with different ideas and all this kind of thing with particularly when it comes to scenarios and stuff and things like that. I mean, I've had some great gaming relationships with some really great people,
Hmm.
and will value those games and those interactions for the rest of my life. And I've had experiences playing with people who were so awful that it's like I walked away from that table and just wanted to have my mind wiped. It was so awful. But nothing's gained from that. There
Hmm.
is no. There really isn't. We regard. I don't understand it. But then that's me.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, mate. No, I totally agree with you. I'm always about. Well, I don't know. Reflecting on my earlier days, my younger days, maybe I was a bit more competitive. Maybe it was just the atmosphere of the games we were playing in our group, but we were all good mates. It was just like, of course, when you came to the table and you really wanted your army to perform well, and I had no idea about being competitive game wise. I just brought stuff that was fluffy and fun and
Oh
cool
yeah.
and what I like to do. And then I got absolutely, romper stomped, and then I'd go away with the shits thinking, oh shit, I'm not going to play that again. I don't want to play that army again. This army sucks. And everyone gets attracted to chaos then, don't you? When you're about 16, 17, everyone wants to play chaos with demons and stuff like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the killer army. It's going to beat everything. So you always go through that. And then, yeah, I think I was lucky. I think I had really good opponents. And I think we share a very similar story. When we got to play Epic back in the day, your opponent was Chris, wasn't it?
That's
The
right,
name
Chris George.
Yeah, my good friend, and we're still really good friends, Chris as well. He was my regular opponent, so we always played together, and we always had great times, and never any arguments, never any kind of ill will. Always fun, always laughing, and having a super time.
Yeah, and you know, Chris, one of the things that one of the things about the Epic game that because when I've always say when I started with Space Hulk, and Space Hulk was mission parameters. You basically wiping out the gene stealers. All the gene stealers are trying to wipe out you, and it's kind of that's pretty much how that game works, and it's a brilliant game, and I absolutely love it. But I didn't realize until I was watching a podcast just recently that really things like 40k and Warhammer and stuff in the beginning didn't have like a formal way of like addressing like victory points and victory conditions and things like that. It was more a case of, well, whoever wipes out, whoever calls time first, is the loser, and all this kind of thing. So, when Chris and I were looking to kind of like go more tabletop, if you like, rather than just playing Space Hulk, Space Marine came along at absolutely the right moment. And you're talking this, and that's the second edition of Space Marine. And so literally you open that game up and you've got, and the victory conditions are there. They're all on the cards. It's very, very clear what you have to do. You've got objectives, and you've got really a game as a complete concept that you can like set up and go through and play. And by the end of it, is very as you are going through the game, even as you're totting it up, you're kind of going, how well you're doing and how badly you're doing, and where you need to kind of, I'm going to have to really, I've got no choice here. I've got to absolutely power home here and push through. And it was great for that. Now that came through in 40k later, and that made those games it meant that you had once again you were able to understand how you're doing stuff. But it really, I think the original idea originated with maybe Blood Bowl or something. I'm not 100% sure, but that idea of having victory points and exactly where you stand was what made Epic Games absolutely brilliant, and meant that Chris and I would play every week. We would play a game of Epic, and same rules, same objectives, different board layout, different armies because you bought a new thing you want to try out, different tactical ideas, all this kind of stuff. And I started with Space Marines, and Chris started with Eldar, and Chris pretty much stuck with Eldar, whereas I very, very quickly gravitated to Imperial Guard, and still love those big companies and stuff. And what always confuses everybody, and they never guess. I did not like orcs, so I just didn't collect them. I just never. It was something I never quite got around to doing. I mean, now I have. I mean, I've got boxes and boxes full of all the Epic stuff that are all painted up, and I need to start photographing so I can actually, this has been my project for the last like 2 or 3 years has been getting this stuff painted up, and I'm at the point now where I'm pretty much got everything apart from all the Titans I've got everything painted up that I could possibly paint up. I mean, it's getting quite funny really, because I'd then start going, oh, actually no, I'd really like to have some aspect warriors. How am I going to do those? And because I haven't got many aspect warriors, and then you figure out how you bulk those bases up with extra models and all that kind. Oh, I love it. Oh, it's such a really just so appeals to me. It's just such a great, and painting epic's wonderful. Gaming
Yeah,
it, painting it, collecting it. It's just the game for me. It's just that, and that really is it. I mean, occasionally I think about collecting a new 40k army and all this kind of thing, and that very quickly gets chucked out of the window because I just kind of go, well, you've put so much time into into doing your epic stuff, and there's always more stuff you can get and add on. Because it's just the stuff I've mostly been working with has been plastic, rather than getting loads and loads of metal stuff, because the metal stuff's so mental expensive. I've tried to avoid that really, but yeah. So it's the whole game's wonderful, and it's just but the actual game itself was always set up on one side of the board. You set the terrain out, put down the objectives, you go at it and smash into each other and see who wins at the end. Whereas I was thinking recently, well, hang on a sec, is there more to this? And it's strange, really, to think after all these years, I never thought about varying that at all.
yeah.
And that's it's like, and that's when I came up with the some of the ideas that I've got written down. And they are just ideas. They're just like things I might want to suggest out there to say, people who've thought about trying this. I mean, I've not tried any of them, but I can't imagine that they wouldn't be fun to experiment with, because I just can, because it's such a robust gaming system. I think you could do a lot with it without actually busting things wide open. Then you can always go back to your original game style anyway, so it's fine.
No, totally, mate. Totally. I totally agree. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you think or what you suggest as different ways of playing Epic. I think it's testament to the game that we played it the same way over and over and over and over again. There was no sort of variations in how you played it, but it's sort of testament to the game that it worked every single time. It was always fun. And it had that kind of swing back and forth through the game that, you were losing, then winning, then losing, then all of a sudden, the table falls over, and then the other person wins or you win. So so we're gonna listen to what Eavy has in a moment. I just wanted to say to 82, because I don't think he can see the comments, and we have a few people that have come in to say hello. We've got 13 people watching, so thank you so much. I didn't really think that anybody would be here because of the time, so I'm really happy to see that Carnifex is here. So
I'm starting to get some come through, actually.
Good. Okay, so that's great. I'm glad that Eavy can see the comments. So please don't be shy. Please come and say hello. Eavy would love to interact with you and talk with you. And this is the best time for you to do that, because it's live. Come and say hello. We've got Scumbag for Customs Sander in Japan here.
Hello.
Good to see you here, mate. So kind of says sounds like someone's not a fan of Terminator Lord with twin lightning claws, combat drugs, teleporter, and displacer field. I think that's a comment about really metagaming 40k second edition. So.
No, well, I can see how someone like that, it's like, and well, I always thought that second dead 40k was more about how great your commanders were than how great your troops were, which was a complete and utter bore to me. I mean, don't get me going. Honestly, don't get me going on the subject of 40k, because it just it's such a great game. I mean, I've always been a third edition guy,
right.
and that is purely because the game was more orientated around troops and stuff. I can remember being on this, driving home on the bus, and there were a bunch of young lads on there, and we got talking, and it was really lovely, because actually they were really nice, really polite, and thought, well, you're great. And they actually said that they felt that the game, it was all about trying to get people to buy tons of toy soldiers. So, well, of course it is.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
I figured it out early. It's good.
Yeah. I'm glad you figured this out, like without any kind of without any kind of like problems with this. It's like, yeah, exactly. It really is about getting you to buy stuff. But I said to them, the thing is that and they were saying about how expensive it was, and I said, yeah, it is. The thing is that yes, it is expensive. More expensive now than it ever has been. But I said that the thing is that you don't have to buy it, but you will, because it's amazing.
Yeah,
you will buy it because it's amazing, because it's just so fun. And the models were, this was 20 years ago. I mean, it's like, but maybe a little less than that. But it's like the stuff is just so good. You want to, because the quality was so high. I mean, compared to some of the other companies that there are out there who produce models and stuff, and there are great models out there, and they're great. It's great stuff. But Games Workshop stuff is as they were producing models of quality much earlier. So anyway, you sent me off on a rant now. We're meant to be talking about...
It's good. That's what it's all about, mate. We got you on different tangents here, but we are going to get to your epic suggestions, mate. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to go through some of the comments that have come in through earlier. They've got objective media. I think the game should be designed around having fun rather than being competitive. It's a game of chance. FFS. If you want a competitive game, go and play chess. Oh, that's Absolutely. A pretty... Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. Or leave out game alone. Not quite sure what that meant, but
yeah. This is Ted. This is Ted in Denmark. Good morning, gentlemen. It's nice to see Ted here.
Hi, Ted.
Matt from in England.
Hello, Matt. I hope you're doing all right.
Day off work.
Oh, you got a day off. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of me that I am a legend.
Lovely,
in my own time.
Johnny Watson Gaming, the other great YouTuber. Very nice guy. Morning all from the UK.
Hello.
And kind of said, "You're right, mate. There you go. He wouldn't object with you, would he? Hey." Free Guild Joe. Hi, Eavy. Thanks for the great articles and battle reports. They were a favorite read back in the 90s. That's very nice.
That's great. Well, thank you. Oh, thank you very much. When you're in the maelstrom of producing a monthly magazine, it's like you don't think about it. You're just getting stuff done all the time. I always find it, people think that it's all that fun and games. A huge amount of work. Well, I mean, I know that you're going to be talking to Steve Anastasov. When are you talking to Steve?
Tomorrow, mate.
Give him my best.
I will, mate.
I always worked a great guy. We did some jamming together because he played bass guitar. Really, really great musician.
Great.
Really interesting guy. Yeah. Lovely character.
Yeah.
We played tons of games together. And just really, really, really great to hear he's doing all right. That pleases me no end.
Yeah, no, that's good, mate. We should get you in contact. You can contact him through our Discord. He's in our Discord as well. So I'll send you his username and everything, and you guys get in touch. It'd be nice for you guys to retouch on those times back in the day. You know what I mean? So it'd be good. I'm sure his life has changed dramatically since you've met him last. So I know he's been involved with the video game industry for quite a long time.
Right. Okay.
and now he's making his own game. So we get to hear about that in the chat tonight. So yeah, and I think he lives in Canada now. So
I think he was. I'm not sure whether he's American or Canadian or not. But
oh, really? He is American or Canadian? Okay, I didn't know. I didn't realize that. Right.
yeah, but at least I think so.
Right. Okay.
So, but anyway.
Objective Media says we thought it was expensive back then. Yeah, but sure was.
Well, yeah, and yes, it was. I mean, fortunately, I was in the position where because I worked at Games Workshop, it was a legendary time when you could buy metal at weight, and pretty much plastic at weight as well, which is just insane. And I mean, and looking back on it, I think I don't know why I didn't do this, but what I should have done is I should have gone through those damn racks and gotten every last bit of epic stuff.
Yeah,
just
mate. Yeah.
Really, I look back and just go, why didn't you? If you were getting it at weight, I think we were so focused on working, on 40k by that stage that the thought never entered my mind. And eventually, it all went over to plastic anyway. So plus they stopped. They stopped you being able to go and pick yourself, and they stopped the whole buying at weight thing. And it was just, I think it was 50. You got it at 50%. And I don't know whether, because I haven't worked at, just so people know, I haven't worked at Games Workshop since 2018. That's when I stopped. August 2018. So it's been so I haven't worked there for 6 years. But it's been enough time for me to get my head together. You work for a company for a long time, and it really does something to you. You become so institutionalized, and then when you come out, there's been a long recovery time, actually.
Yeah, of course, we don't really think about that. And I've never worked for a company for so long. Probably not a great reflection on my character, really, is it? Get the shits after 5 years, got to go. But
I don't think that's true at all, because it's like, I say, I was at 25 years at Games Workshop. Within that time, I worked for so many different departments, doing such a wide range of different things. I chopped and changed. I had the opportunity to chop and change when I was working there, which, it's. I mean, for example, Matt Hudson, who I think is still on the White Dwarf team, joined the White Dwarf team like back whenever it was. I think it was when Paul Sawyer was running it. I think that was the case, and I think he's basically done that ever since and never changed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've always said to anybody, if somebody says to you, do you want to have would you like an opportunity to do such and such, like, particularly to the young, when I was working in Black Library, particularly to the young guys who were working on the typesetting, which I was doing, and I'd say to them, if someone comes up to you and says, could you design me a poster? Say yes, and design a poster. Design a poster. Figure out how to do that. What a great opportunity!
Yeah.
Not just be a book designer, be somebody who's more well-rounded than that. And I'd already, for me, I'd already done all that stuff. I was looking back at it now, I kind of go, gosh, the amount of different stuff that I was involved, writing and everything, was just, so I had just as varied a career, if you like, in different work that I did, as maybe you did, purely because, but I just happened to be doing it, working for the same company and pulling the same paycheck. So
yeah. No, that's fascinating. So if you haven't listened to our interview on the Crown of Command podcast, please do that, because AD talks a lot about his time during Games Workshop and all the different departments he worked for. So go and please have a listen to that. If you're a patron, you get to listen to the bonus. I think it went for like 3 hours. Did we talk for like 3.5 hours? Something incredible.
Hey, it's like, yeah, it shut me up, for heaven's sake. It's like, all the time, shut up, you twat. You know,
that was great. Great. It was awesome. It was awesome because
no one cares.
As a podcasting host, I'm always looking for people who can talk. So as long as they can talk as long as they like, I'm just hitting record and that's it. I'm happy to sit back and listen. I'm a good listener. I'm not a great talker. So it was really good, mate. So if you want to catch the guts of that conversation, it was a big part I put out. It's on Patreon now for those people to listen to. Let's see. We'll just go through the...
By the way, I was going to say there's also a filmed interview on Film Deck Miniatures on YouTube.
There is.
It was it got a lot more views than I was expecting, and some shockingly rude comments.
Hey, it's YouTube, mate. YouTube.
It's YouTube, and it's got just like, terrible people.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go incognito. I'm going to actually find that video and find those rude comments, and I'm going to give them a good shafting, mate, on your behalf, okay? Good verbal shafting and see if they like that.
But honestly,
look at Carnifex on. Carnifex is great at that. Carnifex going, he's brutal, mate. He'll just get in there and get stuck into him. So knives out. That's what we want. Just quickly through here.
Never known how anything could be. I could say anything, and it'd be so misinterpreted.
Oh, right.
You've completely got the wrong end of the stick here. In fact, so much so, this is just deliberate. You're just going to go, oh dear. But
the unfortunately thing is there are twats everywhere, and especially on the internet. I mean, there's full of them. Yeah. So luckily they don't infiltrate the Crown of Command YouTube channel. Maybe one or two on every 6 months or something like that. I think I was accused of being part of the Communist Party at some point, which is a really good one. And a lot of people started showing me porn links or whatever, and and that kind of stuff. So
that's horrible.
But now they're sort of gone away. They're giving up.
Instagram's the worst for every now and again. I'll get some horrible link through to some kind of porn.
I know. Degenerates. They should find a hobby like tabletop wargaming. That's what they should do. Stop pulling it and start painting it. That's what I say.
Yeah. Do something useful with your life for change.
Exactly. Bloody losers. Okay, so we've got Objective Media, another Bat Ring. Not Bat Ring. Bat Rep King. Mind you, Bat Ring King it sounds quite nice too. I think that should be a name of a band in the future. Now, I think me and Ted's friendship is really going down to the wire now. I keep calling him. I always get this wrong. I call people from Sweden Danish and the Danes Swedes, and I'm sure he's going to come out with his axe and shield and hunt me down in Japan and cut my head off. So sorry about that, Ted. I really apologize, mate. You're from Sweden, not Denmark. But he's such a wonderful guy. He always forgives me.
Well, at least you weren't calling me Addy all the freaking time. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, you gave me a good bollocking for that too. Yeah, if people don't know, I was calling Addy. And maybe that's because I'm Australian. I'm just thick. So we just say, "Hey, Addy, how you going, mate?" Like not 80. So it was, and I'm all right. You gave me good, and so you should. You should. And I want people to give me a good bollocking if I say your name wrong, if I'm calling you from the wrong country, giving you the wrong nationality, making you very confused and me at the same time. So I maybe just need to adopt Ted and just say you're Australian, mate. I think that's probably a good way of doing it. Don't confuse the two.
Yeah, I think I could. I think that would be.
If you want to know why, just listen to the two guys. I had those two crazy Swedes on from the Old World Lives podcast. You probably heard that interview, 80.
Yeah, I think
it is hilarious. So I really feel sorry for my Danish friends because they got a real good battering on that one. It was really funny. Now we've got Alberto. Hello from Spain.
Hello from Spain.
Now there's quite a few other comments, but we're going to just go back to them later because I really want 80 to talk about his ideas of how to play Epic in a different way. So 80, please take it away, mate.
Okay. Well, I've got my trusty phone here. Just make sure everything's. Here we go. And I've got a list of just it's just a list of ideas, and that's all it is really. So I'll go through them. The first suggestion would be play for objectives only. Don't play for the arm. You know the value of the arms is irrelevant. Just play for objectives.
Right. Okay.
Now, if you're a Tyrannid player, because apparently they don't score on objectives at all, then I would say, well, you've got a choice. You could either agree with your opponent that today you're playing for objectives, or you're literally just denying your opponent. I don't think that would work terribly well. I think you'd literally have to say, if we're playing for objectives, we're playing for objectives. I mean, there's not many armies that I think apart from the Tyrannid army, they're the only one who don't actually play for objectives, as far as I'm aware. And I think the idea of just of forgetting about the collateral cost of what your armies are actually, how much damage they're doing, not caring about that, but just focusing on the objectives is certainly a different way of what will put a different complexion on things. So that would be number one. The second one. Well, I'm not going to, not like number one as in top or anything like that.
Yeah.
The other one would be to flip that on its head and forget objectives completely and just concentrate on breaking enemy formations. And you could flip, and you could do that. You might want to keep the objectives. I mean, that might probably be pointless, actually. I didn't know whether keeping objectives on the table just to give a focus to the game would be relevant to a situation like that. But then the whole thing with objectives is that one of the things you could do with objectives is you could, for example, rather than have the objectives be such an important part of the game, you could, for example, you could like get rid of them, or you could lower their value. You could say that objectives are only worth point. Logically, based on that idea, you can start to think of ideas. For example, like if you've got an objective, you could have each objective has like you could heighten the amount of points value. You could say instead of them being worth 5 victory points, you could say they were worth 10. So the objectives become much more important focus for the game because you get so much more for them. Or you could have them with a random amount.
Oh, that's a good one.
You could have
a blind objective thing. So
a blind objective thing, and you could actually, I mean, it'd be, that's an idea. You could, for example, you could go through each one and you could roll a dice, and that give you the amount of points that each one is worth, and you could do that at the beginning of the game. Because actually, if you think about it, when most of these army commanders and stuff, it's like if there's a battle, they have that's much more important place than that, and that's a key objective, and that's historically been a common, particularly with modern warfare, or with the same one in the last 100 years or so.
Yeah.
And if you say something like that, you could I don't know how well it would work, but you could keep those. It might not work that well to keep them secret. But you could do that if you wanted to. You could also have a situation whereby each turn you roll for each one of those objectives, and if you roll a 1, you re-roll the objective, you re-roll the number, because some objectives might suddenly become more important as the game goes. You could do that maybe. I mean, that's another idea. You could vary the amount of objectives on the board. You could have more objectives. You could have less objectives, dependent on the size of your board. Really,
Yeah.
Objectives are like are one of those things where you could really instantly skew games, and the way that they play just by changing that one little element. And the other thing is that doesn't mean, and as I always say, I'm not saying you change the game and you always play like that. No, that's not the point at all. The point is that you have the flexibility to say, yeah, I really enjoyed doing that random game, that random objectives thing. Should we do that again? Let's try that again. And and sometimes that might become something that becomes a regular thing that you do. But you can always go back to the standard 5 VPs. I mean, one thing I did notice about the whole objectives thing that I didn't realise, because one thing I did recently is I did a comparison between the net epic rules, which I had a copy of, and the original second ed rules, and I read through the second ed rules just to sort of check my understanding and realise that from the very start I always had a very good handle on the epic rules. And then I started to go through the net epic rules and gave up for about 15 minutes because it was just too much.
Yeah.
Just too many rules, too much stuff, and I thought I can't imagine this being, I wouldn't want to. There's too much stuff here, Whereas the great thing about the epic rules was they were, however many pages they were, it wasn't a massive amount of rules, and you could get stuck in pretty quick. But the one thing, just getting back to my point, the one thing that I did realise, or I didn't realise, was that if you take an objective, it's yours, and you can move away from that objective, and it's still yours.
Yes. Yep.
I never realised. I always thought you get hold of that objective, you have to hold it, And actually, in some respects, that's not a bad strategy.
Yeah.
But the idea of getting an objective and then kind of moving beyond it and then leaving it sat there, which of course means it can. But then any objective can, it can be swooped in and taken by somebody else. But then any objective that can happen. And I was quite surprised by that. I thought, oh gosh, I'd never actually picked up on that before. So that was a bit of a weird one. Anyway, let's get back to my notes so I don't completely.
Yeah, so you can make a house rule that you have to be within 15 centimeters of the objective to keep control of it. If you move away from that, it just goes back to neutral again until someone else claims it.
That's really good. Yeah, that's good. And once again, that doesn't have to be something you could just say, let's play the game like that now. Or let's just play the game like that for this game.
Yeah.
And do it like that, and then you go back to the original rules as they stood. Because the rules are perfect's the wrong word, because they're always open to interpretation. But there's such a good set of rules. It's one of the things about a lot of the rule sets that I see with from that period is that they still stand the test of time today. Amazingly so. It was such a good time. Right. Well, here we go. Here's some more ideas. You could, for example, have like split your table up into random board sections, into board sections, and then you could randomly decide where you were placing objectives within those board sections. Right. And so some board sections might not have anything at all, and then another board section might have 2 or 3, or something like that. So you get like it's a lot more focused where those things are. That might be fine. Let's see. Well, another interesting idea I think would be quite good is that you could limit games to the number of turns all time.
I was going to suggest that too, actually, AD. I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could do it based on time, because if say, I mean, that's fairly, because it's like if you're meeting up for a game, and you've maybe only got a couple of hours, and that's your limit. So it's in your. I mean, that's a good question actually. Is it in your interest to play flat out and get as many turns in as you possibly can, or to play carefully and even more focusedly, only a few turns, but make those turns be really, really decisive? I don't know. I suspect trying to cram in as many turns as possible is probably the best thing to do. So that's good. So there was that idea. Another one, which I think is an interesting one, is vary the size of your battlefields, so you aren't just playing like an 8x8 or a 6x8. Nearly always, Chris and I played on a 6x8 table. That was pretty much perfect for us. But actually, 4x4s are really good.
Yeah, we actually played one this week. This week we played in a 4x4.
4x4 games. The other thing is you could also, like, I mean, Epic is a game that really benefits the more points, the more points you have, 3,000 points, all that kind of usually benefits from that. But I played some games which have been quite low points values, really small points values, and actually they're just as good because it's a great game.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly limit it and play with, and that will certainly, things like how long that game will last is out of the window, because if you're only playing with a couple of companies, and unless you're very, very careful, it's going to be over fairly quickly. I mean, obviously it depends on the companies you take, but you could put limits on yourself and say it have to be infantry companies, or 2 infantry companies and a tank company, or something like that, or the equivalent. Something like that. I could see something like that really working. Let's see. Let me just. I mean, that on the subject of one of the things I would say, which, I mean, I don't know what your opinion is of this, but when Chris and I were playing with Epic, and when it came to choosing an army, we absolutely maxed out on companies.
Right.
If all the time, and bear in mind that we played. I didn't play orcs, so you didn't have to worry about the adding on support cards to make those clans bigger. So I didn't have that to worry about, and we didn't play chaos. Although I really loved it, I love the idea of playing chaos. But that's one where you have your company card. You don't have company cards. You have your great demon cards. And then you have to add a minimum of 3 support cards to those. So that will work quite as well with those. But you could get into kind of. Well, let me just finish off the thought. So what we would do is we would collect as many absolutely as many companies as I could. And then, if you had 150 points left over, you might spend it on a support card. but the emphasis was always on companies because there was such that anything else could be all the. This is I always found the idea of chaos so intriguing, because it's like if you're really brutal or fighting against chaos, you just annihilate each one of those little support cards. You could do it like doesn't that make them really brittle? I mean, I don't know. I've never really fought against them. It's like one of those things. But I kind of think to myself, well, that's how we always did it. We always kind of like had lots and lots of companies and many support cards. But the idea, one of my ideas was that you could create an army by drafting. You could actually draft out.
Yeah.
You could.
We all think about doing the same thing. Yeah.
And you could actually, and as long as you've got the models, then if you haven't, then you take that card back and then you draft something else. But you could do that. I mean, I tried doing that once, a long time ago. An opponent had the idea of doing that, and this opponent hadn't played much Epic, and he suggested let's do it. So it's a bit more random. And he insisted that we had, you have to have some support cards. And so obviously what he then did was annihilate support cards and win the game. Now, I'm mentioning this to Gav Thorpe, who was a long-time Epic opponent at Games Workshop. And Gav just looked at me in this very, very kind of, and he just said, "Do you not realise what he's just done? You with the experience, because he knew how good an Epic player I was. Guess why Gav played me, because he knew I knew all the rules and I knew how to play. And I had a lot of respect for Gav actually. And he said he did that deliberately so that he'd beat you. And I suddenly, and I went, again. And it's when disreputable people like doing disreputable things.
Yeah.
And you think, really, are you that desperate to win that you have to, and he did it. And I remember we played this guy. We were playing the game with the Mega Gargants and this kind of thing. And he started saying stuff like, "Oh, I think it's wrong that you move your. I think you should pivot your tanks on the spot, and then they move in a straight line from that position to where you want them to go, rather than you just kind of move them out which way you want."
Right.
Again, it was just another way of him nerfing the more experienced gamer.
Yeah.
I mean, I went along with it because, frankly, I thought, well, let's see what happens. Let's actually see if this makes much difference. And they didn't actually make that much difference to me, because I was such an experienced player. I just went, okay, I know where I want them to go. That was fine. Didn't actually make that, but I think he was a bit disappointed. But anyway, but yeah, the problem. I'm rambling there. Yeah. So that would be another suggestion of a way to would be to draft arms, because if there's companies that you never get round to, like Rough Riders or Beastmen or something like that, and you kind of think you actually end up with an army that's like Beastmen and Rough Riders. I mean, actually, that'll make a perfectly legitimate army to put together.
Yeah. Yep.
And just have a go at working with it. I mean, that's another idea. But then to insist, but I insist that you take at least 2 support cards to go along with each one of your things. And goes, nah, you wouldn't do that. That's wrong. Yeah, you do it if you'd say that if you were an orc player. You could. I mean, say for example, said, you could add a random element. You could say, for example, roll for how many support cards you can give your clans. So on a 1 to 6, and you 5 really, and so I can take 2 support cards, and then you add the right stuff on. You could do that, for example. There's lots of ways you could play with army choice. You just have to trust your opponent not to be an army.
Yeah.
But then, generally speaking, I think that's generally not a big issue. But, that would be another thing to try. But certainly, I mean, I was intrigued when you were talking about like drafting magic items for Warhammer, and I thought, what a great idea! Who's to say that you're gonna have access to the same magic items every go play? Well, I've got this time. Oh, let's see how that works. That sounds great.
Yeah, it works really well. It works really well, mate, honestly. Yeah, I love it. I love doing that. I mean, not for every single game, but for when we have our games days, it seems like the thing to do. It's almost like a tradition now. We all get together and we just do all the drafting. But it brings out the most incredible combinations. Sometimes you get a bad draw, but sometimes you just got to live with it. You just go, okay, well, that's what I got. And that's what I got to work with. And sometimes you get a really good draw, but it doesn't mean you're going to win the game. So it's
well, it never does. I mean, there are so many factors as to how people, because that's just like a real battle in real life. There are so many factors that have an impact on how a particular battle develops and goes and stuff. It's like, oh gosh, trying to think if there's anything else particularly. Let's have a look. You could this would be an interesting one. About random point value. You could have random point values for each individual army. So you roll. You'd have to figure out how to do this. So you could end up with quite a small army going up against quite a big one. And
yeah, you can do that. Yeah,
that's an idea. I mean, bear in mind, that's going to be tough. It will be a tough one. That just kind of makes every victory point that you get when you're the underdog just be all the more satisfying. And I find that. So that's another idea. And another thought that I had as well. This will be the thing. This is pretty much the. Oh no, there are a few. There's one more. Would be to the idea of doubling victory points for annihilating companies, so that when you're battling, and if you do get that company, you could double the VPs, or you could randomize it. There's it's stuff like that. There's all sorts of little things because like I say, it's such a robust system. I think the last 2 ideas I've got would be to base your missions on like some of the old or some of the 40k missions have got some great ideas in them. What I always really liked from third edition was the idea that you play for zones, for controlling a zone. I thought that might make for quite an interesting idea. You could split the board up into zones, and it's how many, rather than controlling the objectives in the zones, you control the zones themselves.
Yeah.
And I think the rules were that you didn't play for victory points, and if you had to have an intact unit in a zone in order to control that zone. So that's an idea. For example, you could do that, and of course you could also the only, I think the last one would be, which is more to do with the terrain that you've got is for example, you could have like a very jungly board or a city heavy board or that kind of stuff. But I think those are kind of the main really the main ideas I had in my head.
Yeah, and the very good ones too, mate. I'm going to try a couple of those. I do like the ones where they're kind of random victory points for each of the victory point markers. I like that idea. I like the drafting idea a lot. One of the suggestions I'm going to make as well, because we haven't really touched on that, is either siege games, and I know that a Citadel journal did cover. I think Gav Thorpe did that one for siege. I think.
See, siege games. You see, I always, and that's actually brought up an interesting thing, because if you were to play a solo version of Epic, which sounds like you say, oh, that'd be difficult to do. Well, actually, if you played the attacker, and if you were your opponent was a static line, like dug in, so they didn't move, but it was like they did like you have an offensive whereby you go over the top and you're going down across no man's land to attack the enemy, and they're basically shooting you up as you go in. You could make a game of Epic work solo if you did it like that, because you'd have a turn when you did your movements and stuff, and then you would go through the opposition battle line, and literally each one would shoot the nearest target.
Yeah,
and I could see that working. That you could actually get that to that as an idea and go down. And I might give that a try sometime, see how that works. So
yeah, try that out, mate, and see how you go, and let us know how you work with that, because I know you don't actually have a regular opponent or any opponent actually where you are. So and Chris is not interested in playing it again, is he?
No. He's I've tried to tempt him on many an occasion, but he's he likes his computer games, as Chris.
Right. Okay.
He's always liked his computer games, and I've never been at all bothered about computer games at all. It's really not my bag. Not even. I mean, occasionally I'll play I've played like solitaire on the phone, and I've played like jigsaws on the phone, but that usually lasts about a couple of months, and I get bored.
Yeah.
So or forget about it, because I've got so many other things I have to do. So yeah. So well, they're my thoughts on different ways to play Epic. And but as you can see, it doesn't take long for you to just start to go, oh, if you do this, you can then do this, and you can start to come up with your own ideas. And I don't think they should break the system too much, because it's such a robust system. This would just be a way of you'll know very quickly if this doesn't work. This kind of this. The other thing is also to recognise that sometimes, if you're playing a game and you're playing a scenario and you're absolutely stuffed, that might just be bad dice rolls. Might not be the scenario itself, or might not just be the idea that you've had. You might just have had a bad game. And so it might be at least worth a couple of goes on an idea. But once again, I think you'll know fairly quickly.
Yep, for sure, mate. We should give those a go. For those out there in the chat and listening to this at some point, yeah, if you are playing, even if you're playing NetEpic, you can incorporate those ideas into your games as well. I'm not all that familiar with NetEpic and whether they had different kinds of scenario plays or whatever. Another thing was running through my mind too when Eddie was talking about linked campaign. So Eddie was talking about like different points values for each side. You could have it so you have, and me and Paul are doing that. We're doing like Battle for Armageddon, but it's not really the forces don't change. But what you could do is say, okay, if you win, you get an extra 100 points to spend or 150 points to spend in the next game. Just that slight increment, so give you one extra support card, or gives you that, it just gives you a bit more flexibility.
Oh, you've hit another art. You've triggered off an idea in my head. You could start with tiny armies.
Yeah.
I mean, say for example you had, if you had like say chaos, that would work really well for someone like Chaos or Orcs, because thematically you could imagine it happening. Is that you start out with a warlord, sort of with his small band of guys. And then as the more games you play, the more you build up, and the armies get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you add more. And you could add random stuff. You could add stuff that you plan in. You do all that kind of thing, and that would be a nice way to build forces up, and and even if you kind of say, oh, I've pulled out this model that I've not got, well, you've got a choice that you can either redraft or get that model and paint it up for your next game. Ooh, sounds nice. I've done that. I've done that before in campaigns. I remember doing a 40k campaign where I kept getting all this looted stuff. So I remember I got like a sentinel for my orcs, and I got some robots for my orcs, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just stuff that you end up looting off the field.
Right.
So there's
okay.
Stuff like that you can try.
Yeah.
And certainly where the certainly for if you were looking at orc games, if you had death skulls, the idea of them like looting the field at the end of the battle is quite a nice idea. But anyway.
Yeah, no, some great ideas, mate. It's been really good to listen to that. And man, I'm really enthused to play Epic again. I played Epic with Chris last week. It might have been a week from today, in a 1,000-point game on a 4x4, as you were suggesting before. It actually, and we just did 6 objectives, not 8, because of the 20-centimeter spacing between the edges of the board and each objective. It worked out really good. I've never played a small game of Epic before, but it worked really well. Because it was a Discord remote game, and but we could easily, comfortably play it out in a couple of hours, and it was still fun. It had everything. It had all the shooting, hand-in combat, everything. So it was really fun. So yeah, I don't think people should be overwhelmed that you need an enormous amount of staff to start. You could start quite basically with 1,000 points and build it up from there.
I always think particularly when it came to, I mean, one of my favourite articles that I wrote in White Dwarf was "Small is Beautiful," and it was all about playing small games, and it was also all about like incorporating like Necromunda games and all sorts of, where you're actually playing with much smaller forces, because the emphasis always seemed to be in White Dwarf that you had the big 2,000-point army, which is an enormous amount of work to actually put something like that together. And yet, the great thing about something like Necromunda is you only need 5 or 6 guys. You don't need tons of stuff to have a good game. It's far, I mean, from a business point of view, you want people to buy tons of stuff, but from a gamer's point of view, you want to be able to put together and hopefully paint up what you've got, and doesn't have to be something based around tons and tons and tons of models, because I just think it's wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Yeah, so I think so too. Like, I think that's why Necromunda was so popular, especially when it came out, because people were looking for something like that.
Oh, I think so.
And I think the other alternative was Man of War, but I don't think it was commercially as successful, obviously, but because it wasn't centered on the 40k universe. But again, it was just like 8 models and you're in. It was 6 models in.
Absolutely right. I mean, one of the things I would always quite like to have tried out was Man of War, just because I think it looked amazing. But you don't need that much stuff. You don't need. And what was the other one? Of course, Battlefleet Gothic was another one where you don't actually need that much stuff to have a great game. And the great thing about Epic is, when you bought that original box set back in the day, and there was enough models. You had Orcs in there, Eldar in there, and probably twice the amount of Space Marine stuff in there than both those armies, which meant that you had 2 Space Marine armies in there effectively. And it's such good value. You look at it and you kind of think, you really can, just with those box contents, you've got anything you need, but put some companies together and get yourself out there and playing.
Yeah.
And then great, just what a box set, amazing. Oh, and of course you have the Warlord button as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And all the buildings. I mean, that was one of the best things.
Yeah, Oh yeah, all the buildings and stuff is brilliant. Really, really good.
Yep.
You didn't need it. You didn't need anything else if you had the buildings. Your board could be. You don't need anything else on it. You don't need. You don't need a forester. You don't need. I mean, they look great, but you don't need that because the buildings was such great things to have on the board. They just always look so smart.
Yeah, they did, mate. They were really, really nice. Yeah, it was a genius box set that Rick Priestley put together.
That's right.
And it started everything. Like, that set started the format for everything that came after it, like fantasy, 40k second edition, everything in the box.
Oh yeah. So. I don't think it can be overemphasized how important that was.
Yeah, that's right, mate. I totally agree with you. Absolutely. I think Rick feels the same way. When he talks about that. Now, mate, look, let's go into the questions here, because we've got some questions here from our Discord community. Were you wanting a break before we get into that, mate, or you're right?
No, fine, let's go.
Okay, mate. Let me just go. I'm just going onto the Discord group now, and I'm just going to go through the questions so I can read those out to you.
Okay.
So just give me 1 second.
I haven't looked at most.
Go and have a look at the comments, mate. Yeah, have a look at. If you can see the comments, you can have a look at what the people in the chat are talking about. Maybe they're saying hello. Let's see what we've got here. Planet Tobor, is it? Planet Tobor? Here we go.
Howdy. Here we go. Yeah.
You got it, mate?
Didn't realise Eavy was on there until fairly recently. That's a long stretch of doobie. Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, I look back on it. I'm amazed that it was such a long time. I mean, I didn't want to leave. But unfortunately, they do like to maneuver you out the door when you get in your 50s. I mean, I'm 60 this year. She's crazy, but it's like they do like to maneuver you out the door after a while. So yeah, but it's worked out for the best. And and by the way, if anyone's on Discord and you ever want to ask me a question about anything, I will answer it. Don't worry. The answer might be no, but I will answer any question that anyone has for me. Some of I've looked through some of the Discord questions, and 1 or 2 of them were like a bit like, I really can't answer that because that's really not anything to do with me. But I particularly enjoyed the unladen swallow thing was quite fun.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought that was good.
I got the reference. instantly. It's like one of my favourite films ever. So anyway, let's go through some of these questions.
Okay, mate. So I'm not going to share my screen. I'm just going to read those out and just give you some time to answer those, mates. But you've already read them before. You've pre-read these. So we've got, I think it's Ed Abel, his username. It says, what is 80's favorite model he owns and why?
Oh, yeah, the favorite model one. The problem is that there's I'm not going to answer this, but I was going to say is that there's so many great models, but actually ones that I own myself. One of my absolute favourites is the original, or not the. Let's get know the one I meant is the Gazgul Thraka model done by Brian Nelson.
Right.
Absolutely an amazing thing. Really, really, it's a great model. Absolutely, and I've got one. I've not painted it up, but I've got one in my box of stuff. But I would say that was probably my favourite. My favourite mod. I mean, compared to the plastic one the plastic atrocity. I mean, I'm glad I wasn't working at the company when they did that. Hey, 80, we've got the new Gazgul Thraka. What do you think of it? Shite, mate. So no, I'm sorry, it's awful. What the hell have you done? Really, what have you done? What is that? That is awful. And it is, and I do think it's awful. I mean, compared to how amazing some of the other models are for Primarchs and things like that, which are just jaw dropping and I drool and all this kind of thing. And then they do that with Gazgul, and I just thought, what an absolute pile of crap. Terrible. Anyway, that might rattle a few cages, but hey.
I can't actually visualize what that model is, so I need to go and check it out.
Oh, look, that's lovely for you. I think you're in a much better position than I am.
But I don't really keep a track of what games we should be doing nowadays, to be honest, mate. So yeah. I'll take your word for it, though. You know what a good orc looks like, so yeah, I'll take your word.
Oh yeah, no, it's awful. I could. Go. Carry on.
Oh, sorry. I think it's pronounced edible. I think that's not Ed Abel. It's edible. Sorry. The next one now. The next username, unbelievable. Spring Heel Jack of the Guardian 66 asks, any old non-GW games he admired or that bothered him during his tenure at GW?
Games. Debellis Antiqua, I think it's called. I don't know if you've ever heard of this game or not. I should have grabbed a copy of it, flashed up on screen or something. Have you heard of it, Josh?
Sorry, what was it again, Adi? What was it?
Something like Debellis Antiqua.
Never heard of it.
Oh wow, that's great! Really good game.
Right.
It's a bit like War Master. You can imagine, or War Master for playing Ancients.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely, but you can play it with like cut out card counters that you make.
Right. Now I understand. Okay.
And these and so it just looks just like a game, like just like a game of Warhammer or something. That kind of like big units blasting up against each other. Really, really cool. I had a game of it with using Celts.
Right.
Celts and I always thought they were a bit like orcs, really. So I thought I'd go with the Celts. Went up against Roman soldiers and stuff like that. And it's actually really, really delightful game. I think if there was a game I was going to do, that's completely not related to GW at all, which is very unlikely. I think it would be that one. I just think it's just fab.
Right. Okay. So like a hex encounter game, kind of those traditional kind of war games, yeah.
Oh yeah, but not hex.
Hex encounter. So the counters are like those little square chits you put on the table representing units, and then you would move them around. And okay, so a bit like like you said, it's like Battle for Armageddon. Is it War Master? The the Jervis Johnson Andy Chambers games they did. They did like board games.
No, War Master was the epic version of Warhammer that Rick did.
Right.
It's one game. The one game I would have. It's one of those games. Another one of those games I look at and I kind of think I'd really like to have gotten into that. It would have been fun. But it was I think Rick's done a film deck talk about it, and I feel for him really, because it was like one of these great game ideas that if it had come out a few years earlier would have been as big as Epic. I think.
Yeah.
It would have been really because there would have been plastic armies and plastic components, and what they ended up with was because apparently, according to what Rick was saying, is that they ended up producing a book and a range of metal miniatures. So immediately you're putting limitations on what's going to be doable, and it was just get it out there. Let's not worry about it too much. And that was when really the emphasis was going towards Warhammer 40k and the Lord of the Rings as being the main games that you played. On the subject of Lord of the Rings, by the way, I would say the Lord of the Rings game was a real favourite of mine. Great miniatures, best looking orc miniatures because they're proper Tolkien orcs. But I love that game, and I really enjoyed, because I did a load of every month. We did me and Steve Comiskey, my Irish mate who I haven't seen for ages, but lovely guy. We did a whole series of articles based around the Lord of the Rings range of miniatures. It's quite interesting because I don't know if you ever saw any of those, but the actual Lord of the Rings game tends to emphasize heroes, whereas it was us. We went and put more emphasis on the troops, and we had great games, and we ended up coming back to more heroes at the end of the series. But it was a great series of articles, really, really good, and just we did a big board. We did all this kind of it's brilliant, really, really, really good stuff. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's good.
Next question.
Now, War Master and Lord of the Rings, I didn't really have much to do with, so I'd like to, at one stage, get back into trying those games at some stage, hopefully. Yes. So we've got Will Knox 1. Favorite battle report from White Dwarf?
The big fight, which is me, Andy Chambers, and Alex Boyd with playing. There's 3 orc warlords kicking the crap out of each other in a game of 40k, and I won it on a dice. As I always say, I won it on a dice roll. I make no. Everybody made tons of mistakes. It didn't matter, and it was cordial, and they were lovely guys, and they were lovely to game with, and Alex Boyd's army always thought Alex's army was glorious. He had the right skin tone for his orcs. They always looked great. Andy C's stuff looked great as well. And I had my nonsense. And it was a great game that I really loved, and my favourite. One of my great memories was that game. So.
Oh, nice, mate. That's great. Wonderful. All right, so let's go to the next one. Old Hammer Mad Bry. Did the fat bloke really ever eat bacon sarnies? And why did it count in his monthly allowance for the Tale of Four Gamers?
Don't ask me. No idea.
He's Australian. You do realise that, don't you? Mad Bry is Australian. So there you go.
Sorry, mate. I have no idea why there happened. No, that's that. Sorry, that was rude. That was rude and cultural appropriation. And
mate, we're also we don't care. We don't care, mate. We don't care. You can, yeah. No,
seriously.
Yeah.
No idea.
Like I said, it's all done in good fun. But yeah, Bry's a good bloke. Yeah. But okay. Now my good friend here, Ted, says the battle report in issue 202, A Warrior's Duty, was the first one I ever read, and it instantly captivated me. 80 fought with an all-aspect warrior elder army against Ian Pickstock's Imperial Guard. Does 80 have any particular memories or stories regarding that battle report? It's a real favorite of mine, and so any behind-the-scenes tidbits would be really appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a look at it, really, because I couldn't remember it at all, but I'd never played against the Imperial Guard before, and they absolutely stuffed me because I didn't realise they could do half the stuff that they could do, and I was completely caught unawares, and that's the good thing and the bad thing about doing battle reports is that particularly in this case, there was literally like, you're going to do a battle against the Imperial Guard. You don't have any time to look at the rules. You just have to go and do it. And and often one of the things we would often do is we would play games twice because you needed a game to actually find your feet with each other sometimes. Yeah. And I mean, and this is half the problem, is that you would often, it would just be like, and it meant that terrible things would happen because you just like end up with, not really knowing what was going on at all, and no prep. The idea of having an all-aspect warrior army. One thing I will say about them is about the aspect warriors is that even now I have a collection of the old Jez Goodwin aspect warrior miniatures. Oh, they're just glorious. I've never of all the older ranges of miniatures, they're the ones that have absolutely stood the test of time. It just look just as relevant now as ever they have done, more than probably any other. I mean, maybe there's like the old original Space Wolves models, which were just wow. But but before that, the Eldar aspect, well, in fact, all the Eldar models were just like, my goodness me, what a range!
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant models. So, but apart from that, I can't really say much more about it. Sorry, it was just another battle report. I mean, it was showing off the Imperial Guard really, which that worked perfectly well. So that's just fine.
Yeah. All right, mate. Thanks for your answer there, 80. Thanks for your question there, Ted. Hope you enjoyed that answer there from 80. So next one is again Old Hammer Mad Bry, my good Aussie mate. Issue 221, Arena of Death, my favorite article. Looking back on it now, would you have swapped out any of the combatants? If so, who for who, and why is it the Bloodthirster?
Once again, I wasn't involved.
I recently looked at the article. I had to look through some White Dwarfs to find some things, and I saw that one. I think it was Thomas Pirinen behind that, wasn't it?
I think it was Thomas Pirinen, and I mean, we certainly would have been heavily involved in it. And I think the guy who organised it, I can't remember his name, became studio manager eventually, and he was, but it was Warhammer, so I had absolutely no involvement in that at all.
Right.
And why the Bloodthirster? Well, it looks like he beat everybody else.
He beat the big Slan on the big chair, which is great. I was very happy about that, to see the ending. Yeah. He killed the Slan priest. I mean, you know, Bloodthirst is my hero. I'm going to get the T-shirt and everything.
Well, that Bloodthirster model was gorgeous. I mean, you know, just because that was a metal one, wasn't it? I mean, just amazing. Really, really great model. Fab.
Yeah. All right, thanks again, Bri, for the questions, mate. And good mate Wazgob, what happened to the it's a bit of a tongue twister. Obiminatus at the end. Would you have? But it's like an abomination, but I can't say it. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
He came to a very, very, very sad end.
Oh.
We're talking about Abominatus, Despoiler of Worlds, which was one of the biggest conversions that I did, which was based on a piece of artwork by John Blanche of an Imperator Titan that was a Chaos Imperator Corn Titan. Amazing piece of artwork, and I used that as an inspiration to do this model of Abominatus. He survived so many house moves, but eventually got split up. And I just decided I'll be bothered trying to put it back together again. So in the binny went. I look back on it now and I go, oh God.
Yeah, bet, mate. Bet, yeah.
I really do. You know, it's just one of those things. But then I had a bunch of killer cans that went the same way. It's just one of those. It's one of those things that happens when you have mods. And often, in this case, Abominatus was so. It was such a. It's one of these conversions where, you know, all you have to do is go, and the whole thing would fall apart. You know, it was that, or potentially that could have happened if you'd have dropped him. He would just have been simply because he's not the original model. I think the guy asked me, would I ever reforge? No, I wouldn't. Well, mostly because this will answer a question that's coming up actually. But do I think the Imperator Titans and the Mega Gargants did? I think we're talking. Actually, we'll come to that. Let's wait for that question to come through, and then we could. I wouldn't bother recreating them for a number of reasons, which I'll explain when we come to that question. I thought I remembered what the question was, but it's gone. Gone.
All right, mate. Well, there you go. Wazgob, that's your answer there, mate. So it's not to be resurrected anytime soon. So we've got the next question now. Chris Snyder says, what games are you just excited about playing now as you were during the GW years?
Well, I would say obviously Epic, but also Space Hulk as well. I think Space Hulk for me, from a 28mm point of view, it was such a great another perfect example of one of those self-contained games. Great components, nice models. I mean, the Terminators are perfectly functional. Even the flat-on ones that you get, perfectly functional, perfectly gameable, nice looking models. Especially when you paint them. If you paint them up nicely, they'll look really great. And it's just one of those games that I think is quite timeless, really. But yeah, I'd say those two would be the ones.
Right, now just talking about Space Hulk, if you're interested in a remote game with Chris, because Chris hosts 2nd edition Space Hulk with me sometimes, if you're interested in coming to play, Chris would love to host a remote game for you, mate, one day, Space Hulk.
Well, that sounds interesting. Well, that's 2nd edition, is it not 1st edition?
Yeah, 2nd edition.
Okay. I'm not sure I'll be as keen on doing 2nd edition.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how much the rules change. I always really like the Flamer templates that were big enough to do an entire room.
Yeah,
I don't know, mate. I mean, maybe I've never done it, so maybe I ought to have a go.
I would recommend giving it a go. I actually really like the tactical play you have with just putting the templates down, because you can actually block off entries for the gene cells to come through. So it's a nice little like movement denying thing that they have now. Instead of just incinerating a room and that's it, these ones you can put in place and keep them going until the gene cell goes through. So they stop them coming through. They can go through, but they get a chance of dying every time they go through that square.
Well, that's interesting.
So, yeah, give it a go, mate. I really enjoyed it. And Chris is a great guy. He's been a great host. So, yeah, please give it a go if you have time.
All right.
Okay, next question, because Chris has got a few here. If Kev Adams sculpted a Warhammer Fantasy model with your likeness, musician with a drum, of course, what fantasy race would you want to be? Like, what's kind of Warhammer creature or human?
Oh, probably an orc. In fact, I've got one. I've got an orc drummer. I think somewhere I've got that really glorious command unit, that the plastic command unit that they did, where you could put together a commander and a banner bearer and a drummer. I think it would be him. I think he looked great. I always really liked him, so he's great.
Well, you have to go down to Bring Out Your Lead one year when Kev Adams is there. He'll actually sculpt you a head for charity. Yeah, he does that every year. He wasn't there this year, but normally every year he's there. And you buy the miniature, you give it to him. He'll just shave off the front of the face. He'll re-sculpt your likeness on the miniature for like 20 quid or something. And it all goes to a really good cause. So yeah,
that's mental. I've never met him. When I joined Games Workshop, he was long gone. So it's like
true. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, if you look at the Bring Out Your Lead section on our Discord, people will post up images of their figures they got Kev to sculpt in their likeness. It's always nice, and it's a great cause, like I said. Okay, so next question here, got Arch Staten. How would you describe the difference between the Jews, Thornton, and Sawyer eras of White Dwarf? He's talking about here.
Ooh, that would be that could potentially be a very long answer, but to keep it fairly grounded, I would say the Robin Jews era was my favourite. I think the page layouts were beautiful, the articles were great. It was the right balance of words to graphics and pictures. I think every those. I mean, like the Herohammer book magazine that you guys did. And I've been talking to you about how much I really enjoyed that. That was because it's just like one of those editions, and it's because it's just such a great thing. I think they always think look. I mean, I think the Thornton era was marked by Fat Dwarf, and so and I think that was the biggest change to the magazine was making it into Fat. Why that happened, I have absolutely, it was just a decision that was made. Right, we're increasing it to 128 pages or whatever it was, from whatever it was, and became an absolute pain in the neck. Just terrible. Yes, and the graphics, the actual page design and the graphics wasn't particularly great either. Was not a fan of that particularly. Paul Sawyer. I was leaving White Dwarf around the time that Paul came into it, and it was still very graphics heavy, and didn't really do a lot for me really. So I think that's about the answer I can give you really.
Yeah, no, good answer, mate. I really enjoyed Robin Dews's interview on Film Dig about White Dwarf.
Yeah, I thought it was
And
good as well.
like you, I think they're the best White Dwarves ever made. Like when Robin was in charge, I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that layout, the size of the magazine, the contents was great. Everything about those issues was awesome under his guidance. So
I think he really understood the job he had to do. He had a fantastic grasp on that, and I think it came through so well on the magazine. It was. I've always, when I worked for Ladybird Books at one point, and I had a great boss then, and really, really good boss. It probably is the best boss I ever had. And Robin Dews was a great editor to work for. We didn't agree with it we didn't agree on anything. In fact, I'm not sure we ever agreed on anything. Certainly not. Not like personally or sociologically or anything like that. I don't think we agreed on a single thing. But he was great to work for. So that's that's good. Anyway, next question.
Okay, mate. So we've got Dr. Spork here. Adrian, I was always a big fan of your conversions. Your war boss made from an Ogren and your Orc Dreadnought, your Genestealer Cult Chimera, and all other things. I used to pore over the pictures in White Dwarf and try to figure out how you had done them. You inspired me to come up with my own, like my war boss below. There's a picture here. But I would love to know which one was your personal favorite and were you most proud of and why?
Well, that's an easy one. The Orc Dreadnought I did for Gorka Morka.
Oh.
That the idea was to produce a dreadnought for Gorka Morka that would look like it had been really was constructed out of like smashed up stuff on a planet. So I was able to get whatever parts I wanted from mail order and assemble this dreadnought, and it was so popular that they had like you could order it from they did a parts list, so you could order it from mail order, and so the main thing that gave it its unique shape was the squig catapult columns with the horns on it. That really was the thing that gave it its character. It's kind of its silhouette. And I always think it looked great. And looking back in photographs on them now, they always look. And I look at them and I think, and they tell me that it had a big influence on what they did with the Orc Dreadnought after that, and certainly the Orc Dreadnoughts and the Killer Cans that came out after that in metal were just beautiful. I'd love some of those because they're just such nice models. I mean, the Orc Dreadnought that we had before that, not talking about the egg on legs that you got in the beginning, but the proper kind of look like a dustbin one. That was also very nice. So all the dreadnoughts have been really good. But and the plastic one. I've constructed tons of the plastic ones and lots of the cans and stuff, but I think the metal ones that were done, which were the last versions that were done with the Killer Cans and the dreads, I always think they look really, really great, really good. But no, I'd say that. Well, it depends on whether it's a building job or it's a conversion job, really. However, if you want to split hairs on it, but let's not. Let's say that one's the one. I mean, Abominatus was an amazing one. I mean, that was another one which was like, my goodness me, that was a that was a massive job, and also because I did all the all the other small titans that unfortunately went the same way as Abominatus and ended up getting smashed.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, talk about a disaster. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I'd say that would be mine. That would be my favourite.
Oh, great. Okay, mate. So there you go, Dr. Spork. Hope you happy that answered that. The orc conversion that you've seen on our Discord now. Unfortunately, if I had arranged this ahead of time, I would have had it in a folder and I can present it to everybody. Check it out on our Discord if you remember there. If you're not, come and join us. It's free. Come in, say hello. Check out the picture here because Dr. Spork, he actually won second place in the painting competition at Bring Out Your Lead 2024. So well done, Dr. Spork. It's an absolute awesome conversion and it's a really, really good paint job. So yeah. Now have a look, mate, because he's one of my painting students on my eavylead painting tutorials. Not that was any influence at all. I think he's painted this well before we started those, but it's a really knockout paint job and conversion. So well done, mate. Okay, so gone to the next one. We've got Spurious, and he says, I just wanted to say I've always admired AD's approach to conflict resolution in games. Now, it's got a picture here with Nick Davis from a White Dwarf magazine. It says, Adrian and Nick Davis disagree over a rules point in a recent game. As you can see, they discuss the problem in a calm and friendly manner until Nick realizes that Adrian was right all along. Now, you see, obviously this is a visual, an audio thing, so you can't see what it is, but if you got that White Dwarf, you can check it out. I don't know what White Dwarf issue it was, but you got Adrian trying to strangle Nick Davis and trying to smack him over the head with an army case or something, or a chair, and then it's all good and friendly at the end when Nick realizes that you're the boss and you're just going to take out whatever AD says. But yeah, it's a good one.
I always thought that was a good bit of fun, not at all real in any manufactured form.
No. Nick Davis is another guy who's resurfaced recently, and 90% Geek, Ben, the host of that on his YouTube channel, he did a 4-part interview with him. And it's really good. It's really interesting because it's about his time at Games Workshop when he came into it, like really early Warhammer 4th edition, I would say, when he came into the studio. And of course, you know him because you work with him. But
yeah, absolutely,
how he got there was interesting. Like what his previous job was to that. Like he was part of some kind of car crash testing kind of unit, and it was interesting how he got in there and what all the stuff like you, AD, he sort of moved from different department to different department and learned different things, and he sort of did the same. So it was a good story. Then I enjoyed that. Okay, John Paint says, hey, or hi, AD. Now, they say Adrian. I'm not going to say Adrian because you get very upset when I say that. So, hi, AD. Thanks for all the great memories. One, which Games Workshop game was your favorite at the time, and why was it Epic Space Marine Titan Legion Expedition?
Yeah. That's
we kind of answered all this. Yeah.
Well, I think we've already talked a bit about that already, so as to why.
John is a massive Epic fan. Like, if you look at the Epic Space Marine channel here, it's just full of John's models and painting, and it's great. He's actually British, but he lives in the US.
Oh, right.
So, and like you, mate, he hasn't got any opponents. He's got no one to play with. He's just got this massive collection of stuff he's painting, and like you, he just likes collecting and painting them.
Oh yeah.
So, too, I'm interested to hear what your opinion is for the Imperator Titan, Mega Gargants, and what they brought to the game.
Well, that's a really good one because I think looking back on them, to my gaming experience of Epic, I don't think they added that much myself. I mean, they were such complicated beasts to control that actually you could have games with just those models in it, and it would have been enough. I can't actually say I was that big. I mean, I think they're great looking models and stuff, but I was never that big a fan of them. I like Titans, but but I prefer troops more. So I think that's what I'd say about that.
Good on you, mate. Yeah, I think they look like I haven't actually played with one yet, and I'm still got my Mega Gargant to finish off. Paul's finished his Imperial Titan off, but looking at the sheets and how you have to roll for all the crews and then assign the crews to different locations on your Mega Gargant, it is just a mini game within a game. It's just
absolutely.
It looks like one of those kind of work replacement kind of games. They have those board games now where you have to, it's like basically you do your job in a board game. It's kind of like that, doing an orc boss's job in a Space Marine Epic game. So
yeah.
I look forward to trying it though. Number 3, were there any house rules that you can remember from the White Dwarf bunker or otherwise that helped the game run smoothly? I think it's about Epic.
Oh, well, that's a good one as well. I mean, that's one that stood out for me when I was reading through the questions. House rules, but this comes back to a problem that we had with one of the battle reports that I did, when we had someone come in from outside the company who frankly didn't know the rules, and then I played a battle report against him, and it was just a debacle because because he would be using his own house rules in order to play the game, and I had to constantly stop it because I would be like, he'd set up his scouts in cover, and I go, okay, great, well let's go and find those scouts there, and they go, oh, you can't do that because if they're in cover you can't see them, and it's like, and nobody can see them. It's like, that's not the rules at all. It really and so my point is that the one thing we couldn't allow, especially when we were doing battle reports, were house rules. We had to play the rules because there was no point in that, because those rules were the things that we were selling. So we weren't selling house rules, we were selling the rules that we were actually doing. So in a lot of ways, I mean, I say that, but if you're playing against an opponent, and when it comes to things like line of sight, you might say, we played that you could see through woods, or we played it that you couldn't see through woods, or it was purely WYSIWYG, which is probably the best way of doing it. Is that you get your head down and you actually look, can that model see that model? If they can, then you can shoot at them, and that's probably that level of because it gets very abstract otherwise. And if you're going to go abstract, that's fine, but that never really worked for me. But no, we didn't actually. With house rules weren't something that we used because we couldn't and wouldn't. And certainly where Epic was concerned. Oh, that's one interesting thing that where Epic was concerned, Chris and I played the Epic rules absolutely as they were written. But there was one thing that we agreed amongst ourselves, was that there was, I think, the Eldar Titans in Epic was so fragile that we came up with an idea that barrages would always deviate twice because they were so easy to destroy on the surface of it. They were so easy to destroy that we decided that we'd say, oh, let's make them so they're a little bit harder. But actually, I mean, in the end, I think we ended up going back to the actual rules as they were written. You just had to get used to working with them. But I think that was the only major deviation that we ever came up with.
I was going to say, that's a very kind suggestion from an Eldar player, especially giving that kind of house rule. Amazing. Usually they're very protective of their Eldar Titans, but okay, that was a good one. Okay, good on you, mate. Now, Spurious says again, was there any sort of overall plan on setting up the battle scene photos that populated White Dwarf? Not the battle reports. Was it basically up to the photographer? I think he's talking about like the.
I know exactly what you mean. It would vary all the time. Because it would depend on the situation. It's like, say you had a space to fill, then you would just grab some models and fill it with a space, something appropriate to the article. When we were looking at opponents for models, because for the most part we quite like to have two forces going against each other because it was a battle game. We would try to find models that were quite contrasting visually and contrasting like ethically, if you like. So you would have Imperial Guard against Orcs or Imperial Guard against Chaos, or some other such. I always remember the first time that we were going to do a battle shot of Cadians, and Alan Merritt, who was one of the great guy drummer, he came over while we were taking the photograph, and he said, "Why don't you use some of the Warhammer demons, the fiends of Slaanesh? Why don't you use some of those guys? Because they're perfectly usable in games of 40k because they're demons.
Yeah.
Why don't you just get some of those? Drop that." One of my favourite pictures because it, and also because Cadia was so near the Eye of Terror. It was absolutely perfect, really, really great. The biggest problem we had with those kind of photographs was that a lot of the junior photographers, because I didn't do everything, a lot of the junior photographers would often space the models out so much because there's an expression called interference where you have models kind of overlapping each other. And if they overlap too much, they interfere with each other and you start to not be able to see the models. So they ended up like would move them so far apart that it didn't look like a game anymore. It just looked like models stood around. So it was always a case of trying to find that balance where models were grouped together enough to look like they were, I mean, forget like unit coherency of however many inches it is, because if you do that in a photograph, the models look like they're stood like absolutely massive distances away from each other. So you'd reduce your unit coherency to about half an inch because it looked right then. It didn't, if you did it properly, it just look completely wrong. They stop looking like units. But usually, sometimes it was at the discretion of the photographer. Most of the time, the articles had requirements that was very, you needed a photograph to be this, and so you just did it. But good question. I mean, it made me think that time. Very interesting one.
Certainly was, mate. Absolutely. So I can imagine like looking at that sort of technical information of like where the models are set up, how they're the right balance and everything, the colors, the terrain used, the backdrop. Yeah, there's so many considerations. It's not just plonking models on a board and saying that's it. Just take a few snaps and away we go. Yeah, there's quite a lot of thought behind that.
Yeah, there's tons really. I could do a whole math class on it. I mean, if anyone ever wanted to talk about setting up or setting up shots for anything to do with what any of you guys are doing, I mean, Andy Chambers was the master because he did that before me. I would usually take a photograph, show it to him, and he would say, "Oh, actually, shuffle this guy forward a bit," and he would be able to. We'd do that, and it was great. He would be the guy he would be my mentor for taking taking photographs. He was always really good at that.
Right. Okay, mate, that's excellent. That's interesting to know. I wouldn't have thought Andy Chambers would be the guy, coordinating all that.
Man, he was the man for that. It's one of those, you always think about him as being like a writer and stuff, but he had a production a production job in the first place, and it was photographer. So,
quick question
probably
from me. I haven't got any questions here listed on here, of course, Adi, you don't know that, but one question or proposition for you, because Andy Chambers is also part of our Discord. If I can arrange a remote game between you and Andy in a game of Epic Space Marine, would you want to do that?
I don't know. This is no disrespect to him.
No.
I've seen Andy for 20 years, and
Yeah.
you know we always got on very well. I think I might want to play a few before I faced Andy again. I think he would like, oh no, yeah, but I don't know.
Okay, we'll put it on pause for now, but we'll see
Yeah.
at some point, because that'd be something really nice to see, not just for myself but for everybody else, to witness a remote game between you guys playing Epic again.
The thing is, if he's in Nottingham, we wouldn't even need to do it remote.
Oh, there you go. Okay, well then, yeah, we should. Yeah, well, you've got all the miniatures, mate. You've got them all painted. You just need to get Andy over. Just
but
put the kettle on, and you're right.
He would do anything like that, and like I said, we didn't know each other that well, so he might not want.
Right. Okay. I totally understand. I totally get it. Yeah.
I think, with respect, I mean, he's possibly as nervous of. I mean, he might not be, but I mean, I'm a little bit nervous as to who I play against, just because.
Yeah.
Person I am and what have you, and I don't know if he's the same or not. He might
just,
be. I mean,
just meeting out for a coffee would be nice, wouldn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe if he was into it, but I wouldn't. I would understand if he wasn't that bothered, and I wouldn't be embarrassed or anything at all. I would just go, mate. I mean, all I'll say about Andy is I think Andy was a great bloke. He was great to work with, and because I haven't seen him for such a long time.
Yeah.
It's because he when he left Games Workshop, it's like, and he's gone on to do such great stuff. I mean, it's like, wow, mate, well done. What a great career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Sure has had. Okay, mate. So let's look at the next question from Jason Stockwell. I should have limited to one question per person. Actually, it was going to take forever. So has the culture changed over the years at Games Workshop? If so, how?
Yes, I think the culture did change a lot. When I first came into Games Workshop, I always say you could taste the fear, and that was because there was always everyone was frightened they were going to lose their jobs. They were frightened that something was going to happen, and all this kind of thing. This is saying this. I have talked about this before in on our Patreon things, and I have mentioned this before. But basically, it became much more corporate over time, and but the problem is that a lot of the old guard who were there, I think often was still kind of thought it was we were the same company that we were back in the 1990s, and it was like I think you've completely missed. Things have moved on. Things are different, and things change all the time. There are questions about as the demographic that the company is aiming for have changed. Yeah, changed all the time. So fine. Nothing really to do with me.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, mate. Okay, Jason, second question is, Games Workshop has always had the desire to make money. Would you speculate why so many people now claim GW now feels different? Have they ever changed the target market?
Oh, that's the target market, which I think I've just answered, really.
Sorry. Okay, that was a target market. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
And 3, can you ever see analog hobbies going away due to tech?
No, I don't actually. I mean, looking at, I think people love building models. The amount of the fact, if in Japan you see the photograph of all these these amazing like robots and plastic robots that you kind of clip together, and I've had a go at some of those. They're great. and building scale models and tabletop wargaming and all this kind of thing. I can't imagine that computer games will ever quite supplant it. Maybe in my lifetime, possibly not in my lifetime. But I think, you see, this is one of the things that comes up about the whole question about value, particularly with Games Workshop stuff. And that is, yes, I would be the first person to say Games Workshop stuff costs a packet. It's ridiculous how much the stuff costs. And even like buying stuff in eBay and various other places of old models, the prices are like, just what in the hell? Just, guys, this is getting beyond obscene now. But the thing is, the one thing I would say though is that if you spend 40 quid on a box set of miniatures, you could probably spend 40 quid on a computer game. I don't know how long computer games take to pay, but they have a shelf life. Whereas if you buy a box of war games miniatures, you're going to assemble it, you're going to paint it, and then you're going to have it in your army, and you're going to have it potentially forever. And I think that there is a even though they cost a lot, the actual value to you in the amount of actually playing time and assembly and painting and all that kind of stuff, I think at least is equal to how much they cost, if not a hell of a lot more. Plus the quality overall of Games Workshop stuff is always really, really good. And when you compare it to other companies, there are a lot of companies that are doing great stuff, but as I always say, they're never quite. They're not Games Workshop quality. Things.
Okay, very comprehensive answer. Thanks, mate. Okay, so I think we're going to the last few questions now. So we're almost at the end because we've been on here for 2 hours, mate. Can't believe it.
Oh well, it's the usual thing. You get me
fun.
No.
So I've got a good friend and patron, Mark, says, "Hi, Adi. You've spoken with Josh before about your time at Ladybird Books in Loughborough. For many of us, Loughborough. Okay. For many of us, right. Okay, sorry. For many of us, those books, alongside Usborne and DK, were the mainstay of non-fiction reading as kids. In the 90s, I felt the page layout at GW for White Dwarf rules and supplements took lots of cues from children's non-fiction publishing, especially when explaining complex concepts and rules and for breakout flavor texts. What skills do you feel that you gained at Ladybird that helped you in your later career at Games Workshop?
Oh well, I mean, my time at Ladybird Books, I always say that I learned more in my first month working at Ladybird. The whole time I was at art college. It was just amazing. The main difference was coming into Games Workshop from. It wasn't an immediate thing. I had a job in between, but going from Ladybird going into Games Workshop was that at Ladybird everything was manual, what we call manual paste up. It was when you would literally cut out sheets of paper with text on and place them on and glue them onto board that was then photographed and then printed, and that's putting it very simply. So it was, so from a technical point of view, it was completely different because, well, I mean, when I started at Games Workshop, most things were done on the computer. But funnily enough, even then, there were times when they would do manual paste up stuff, and I'd be saying to Robin, "Why are we doing this? Why are you still manually pasting up this when you could be doing it on a computer?" And I think eventually, didn't take long. Eventually, it was kind of like, well, actually, let's just start doing it all on the computer, and it just made sense. Made sense to do it, because it was like, why would you do it? Why would you do it any other way? One thing that I worked in the advertising department at Ladybird, and one of the things that we did realise at Ladybird is that was disguising an advert as an article, and that as an idea as really, in a lot of ways, Games Workshop articles are adverts in disguise a lot of the time. And I remember doing an advert once for one of the battle bunkers that we did, a battle bunker model that we did, and it just didn't look like an advert. It looked like an article, but it was definitely an advert for the box set that was coming out. And I think that it's that kind of idea, I think was good and was relevant. Yeah, definitely.
All right, that's great. I hope you enjoyed that answer, Mark, from 80. And he says, sorry for the geek graphic design question, because I know that Mark is a graphic designer himself.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, but it's my background too, and I'm really interested in what other designers think about this. So it was a really good question. Thank you, mate.
Well, if you ever want, talk graphics with me, we can talk about stuff like that. I'm always interested. I am still a graphic designer to this day. I design posters for my wife's singing business mostly. That's what I mainly do. But I'm still heavily involved. In fact, I met up with a mate of mine who's a singer last night. Is a good mate of mine who I design posters for him all the time, and we spent quite a while talking about our time in the graphics and because he worked for Central Television, which was a British television corporation that operated in Nottingham, not far from where Games Workshop ended up in Lenton, funnily enough. But we were talking about that for a while. So I love talking about it. It's always where you get ideas from. Where do people get ideas from? And don't get me started on this. I'm stopping there. Cut, or we'll be here all day.
No, so yeah, Mark can get in touch with you anytime, mate. So that's good. Okay, that's good. I'm sure you appreciate that. Now, the last question comes also from the Bedroom Battlefields Discord group, because I posted something in there about it, if they want to contribute with some questions like Mark did. It says here, so AD, did you ever get the weathering on the Nutty Boys?
Yes, I saw that one, and yes, I did. I did. If I actually looked back over, if you look at the in issue 237, which is the one with the big fight in it, if you look at the vehicles that are in there are the same vehicles that I use for Gorka Morka. I think it was the bus was the big one, and I in the original model, the colours were just the blues were just flat painted on, really strong, kind of very old kind of 40k style. But then for the later models, I went in and I weathered up all the panels and made it look a lot more, not the blue back, and made it look a lot more naturalistic, and it looked great for it. Bits of rust and all this kind of stuff. So I did it eventually. No idea what happened to that model. It disappeared.
In the bin?
Yeah, somewhere.
Lucky bin. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, Adi, thank you so much, mate, for answering all those questions from our Discord group. I'm sure there's going to be questions in the chat. Are you still okay to keep going, mate, for the live stream? Or do you want a quick break? You all right?
Yeah, a little bit longer, yeah.
Okay, so please thank Adi for his time, guys, because it's now going into like almost 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is wonderful. So you get to
we go for it. We go for it when we get going. We go for it.
Yeah, mate, that's it.
So it's always a pleasure doing stuff with Josh. Josh is a great guy, and I think what he's got here is is a really great thing. Don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. Sorry, I'll be quiet there.
Oh, thanks, Adi. Thank you. Appreciate it, mate. And likewise, since we've connected, it's been a great time to talk with you about many different things, not just hobby, but other stuff as well. So, and we do sometimes, if our times line up, we do go into our Patreon and we chat in the Patreon Discord group or the other chat room, and we can share our cameras. We can show our models we're working on. You're doing epic stuff, and we just chat and talk with all the other guys. It's really good. I really like that because it's all about the community. It's all about us doing a hobby, enjoying our time when we have time to do our stuff. And,
Right.
So people shouldn't be shy. Come and say hello to Addy in the Discord group, guys, if you want to. I think I said Addy. My God.
Yeah, you did.
You should say, okay, that's a doll you got to put in the jar.
My job.
It's the inner Aussie coming out of me. So we've got a few more other comments here in the chat because I've been neglecting you poor people. I'm really sorry, but there's a load here. So we've got some love here from Thomas. So I'm going to show this message here. A big thank you to one of my childhood heroes. There were lots of great enthusiastic writers in the White Dwarf issues of my youth, but the Grand Warlord was a real titan, Gargant among them.
Gargant sounds good. I'd like to be considered a Gargant. Thank you. I'm certainly big enough these days to be a Gargant. So. Thanks,
Nice.
Thomas.
Good on you, Thomas. Good on you, mate. So we're going to go through some of the questions and some other comments we've got here as well. So I apologize if we don't get to all of them. So we've got here Kim Nix. Why isn't it doing my stupid mouse? Here we go. Guten Morgen, Jarl.
Oh, guten Morgen.
So she's obviously based out in Germany. So Kim Nix, thanks for joining us if you're still here. Now, my Swedish friend, Ted. Still, Ted, I didn't call you Danish. I called you Swedish. Okay, so I didn't remember. So what's your opinion about the 1997 Epic 40k game, 3rd edition?
Ooh, I know that I've heard Andy C and Jervis both talk separately about third edition and how I think they didn't. One of the things they say is they didn't realise quite how much people like 2nd edition. So when they did 3rd edition, I don't know their brief really, but I get the impression that the idea is that they wanted to reduce the amount of card components in the game. So they wanted things like getting rid of the command markers and the order markers and things like that. So they got rid of all of those. They got the command sections were not as powerful as they were in 2nd edition. The blast markers were interesting. Were an interesting game mechanic, and I know that's one of Andy Chambers' favourite mechanics. What is my opinion on it? I unfortunately think it really, really knackered Epic. I think it knackered Epic at Games Workshop. I don't think it was anywhere near as well liked. I mean, I played it. I don't remember any of the games particularly, and I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a bit silly, really, because what I should have said was, you know what, I'll just stick with 2nd ed. But it's like you go to 3rd edition, and the whole game's gone. Then they're just like the whole thing got dropped because there was and part of that was because there was the emphasis on 40k and the 28 millimeter gaming just made the company more money. So, which I just think is a real shame, because I think Epic in all its guises is a great system. It's a great thing, and but that's my opinion of 3rd ed. Not a massive fan, much more of a fan of 2nd ed. Like I say, I'm not a massive fan of although I've never played it, because there's just too many rules and stuff. But for Net Epic, I'm I guess I'm just an old stick in the mud. I like my second ed. I'm not even that bothered about Titan Legions, really. It's once again, I think they hit the balance just nicely with the with second ed myself. That's what I think.
Nice, good honest answer, mate. Now we're going to go to another person here, new person here, Francisco Guerra. Such a pleasure seeing the Grand Warlord talking about these things. I grew up reading White Dwarf while he was an editor, and now being in the media industry myself, I'm envious. Thanks for all the great times.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Francisco. Francisco, thank you very much.
Jorgen Bender. Sorry, I was going to call you Bender. Great stuff. This I read 80s old White Dwarf articles. Small is beautiful. You just talked about that, wouldn't you? About his experience playing Wii 500 to 750 point Warhammer 40k games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's my certainly for the second edition rules. I think that the because they're basically the same rules as they used in Necromunda. It was for all intents and purposes, but it just worked so well with for me with smaller games. That they're great, and that is I was quite surprised when I read through the article because I thought, gosh, did I do this and did I do that and I do the other? Because I wouldn't have made any of it up. I would have done it. Looking at it, I suddenly thought to myself, gosh, I was doing so much gaming. So that was a time when I was playing so much. Absolutely amazing. And part of the reason was that you can play lots of games when they're small. You can just, you can you can do it. You can do a game in a lunchtime, and you get it done, and you get that experience. It's great. I always found it quite funny though was like a few years later, this guy came out with the whole 40k in 40 minutes thing, and I thought, nice title, but it's our idea, and I always thought that was quite funny. But anyway,
no, I think you're right there because, I think I would probably appreciate the smaller games because you're learning as you're going. You probably try something else different. You probably try a different unit type, different weapon. Yeah. Because if you're playing larger games but not as often, you tend to use things or not use things enough, forget about things, and I suppose Necromunda fills that gap as well in many senses because a lot of the rules and the weapon systems were very similar between the two. So we've got Camillo from Australia. Oh, my mouse is doing weird things. Here we go. Glad I caught the tail end, so I just want to say wah to the Grand Warlord.
Wah. Wah right back at you. Yeah.
Okay, here we've got another person here. So I'm trying to catch some new people here. Mandolly says, just want to thank 80. Space Marine Epic got me into the hobby back in 92. Been playing Warhammer games since then. Nice.
Oh, yeah. Nice one. Thanks very much.
All right. Well, we've got some more questions here for you, mate. Let's have a look here. So I know there were a few other questions here that we've missed. Maybe I think Matthias has asked a question because he thought he might be too late. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Come on, mouse. Too late for questions. If not, a hobby dream for me has long been a cross-system campaign like Man of Warhammer Fantasy Mordheim or some such. Did you guys ever try something like that?
Well, not in the. I think there was certainly. I think Andy Chambers may have done some stuff like that when he with his gaming friends that he did. I know one of the things that Chris and I did was we really liked the idea of playing an epic game. Playing an epic game and then using the results of that epic game to inform a game of 40k, which would then inform a game of Space Hulk. So you could go from epic to 40k to Space Hulk and go down. And I mean, if you looked at it another way, you could do a game of Battlefleet Gothic for example, and then do a game of Epic, and then you could do that. You could do stuff like that. You could like put a Necromunda kind of game in there as well. Or I think they're great ideas actually, and nice ways to weave the different systems together, and you can enjoy the systems for what they are, but then they all kind of inform on each other, which I think is a great thing.
I will say this too, because when I got back into Epic, I was looking for new articles, especially in the Citadel Journal, and Jervis Johnson did do a crossover between Epic and second edition 40k. It was a massive campaign system that ran over 2 issues. It was huge, and I've never played it, but I think you started off with something crazy like 50,000 points you had to make an army out of.
Gosh.
And that would be, and then you have like a massive map, and then you have to you have to split up all your points in different segments or sectors of the map. And then when you get to play them, you can either play them as a big battle in Epic, or then if they're more centralized and smaller, then you could use second edition 40k rules. So for people looking for that cross of different systems for 40k, check that out. It's in one of the Citadel journals, but don't ask me what issues they were. I don't remember. So, but yeah. Okay, mate, I think we've come to the end of the questions, and I think we might just probably wrap it up fairly soon, if that's okay, because we're almost at 2 hours, 20 minutes. I think everyone's had a wonderful time interacting with you today. And again, I just want to just convey my great appreciation for your time, mate. I know that you're a busy man, but you're a man of leisure too, because in the mornings you get to sit back and put Epic models together.
I'm doing recently, but yeah, it's normally what I'll be doing first thing in the morning. Not so much recently, but I do need to get up. The main thing I need to do is I need to get photographing them. I want people to see stuff.
Yes, 80. I was going to say, mate, get your YouTube channel, because I know you have a YouTube channel already, and we're going to touch on that, because you are a professional drummer and you're a professional drum teacher, and you do these lessons in person and online.
That's
so
right.
I really wanted to get people to know that, because hey, if they're interested in getting into drumming like my son is, they should contact you through Instagram or through the Discord or through an email address. I'll leave links here in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. But would you want to just talk a bit about your drumming lessons and that kind of thing for the people here?
Just in case people don't, very, very briefly, in case people don't know, music has always been my second career. While I was working with Games Workshop, with everything, I was always in a band, and I've always been like playing loads of original material and covers and doing all of that kind of stuff. I spent 10 years playing in a blues band, which we were gigging like three times a week every week. So like having another job. Crazy the stuff that we were, that I've done over the years as a drummer. And just recently, what I've started to do is I've started to take on students, and I teach mostly. I always teach one-on-one, and I've got students that they either come to my house, or I travel to their houses and I give them lessons there, and I tend to emphasize reading because it's a great way of recording. If you have a page of rhythms to practice that you read and practice, that's far more effective than me kind of sort of saying, do this, do that, do the other, which someone might forget. I mean, I've tried to teach people who struggle with reading, but I've always found it's never an effective thing. So if you want lessons with me, you'll certainly be learning how to read, and it's not hard. In fact, if anything, if I talk to most people who are music teachers and who are involved in music education, they'll often say that the sight reading side of playing an instrument is like, in a lot of ways, it's like it's 80% of, and the rhythm side of it, getting the rhythm right in when you're sight reading stuff is 80% of getting the work done properly. Because if just to explain that, if you play the wrong rhythm, is far worse than playing the wrong note. Because you can play a wrong note and that's out, and you play a wrong note. But if you play your rhythm wrong, particularly when you're working, like if you're playing in an ensemble or playing in a group or doing whatever, it can cause terrible problems. So, and I've experienced this working with bass players in the past who insisting on playing the right notes, but are actually playing completely out of time, and it's just awful. It sounds like garbage. It's crap. But anyway, that's you'll learn that. I can teach you anything you want, pretty much. I mean, I'm not a specialist in like Latin music or anything like that. But if I can teach you to read, as one of my 8-year-old, one of my youngest students is 8-year-old Ralph said to me the other day, gosh, this boy has an old head on his shoulders. He turned to me and he said to me, these complex rhythms that you're teaching me, if you're teaching me to read like this, I'll be able to read anything. And I'm like, what? This little lad's 8 years old and he's already figured this out. And I'm going, okay, right. Well, we'll keep feeding you stuff to keep you getting better at doing stuff. And like I said, I'll teach. I haven't done. I'll be honest. I've not done a lot of teaching online. I've done some online lessons, one-on-one. But I want to do a lot more of it. I want to open myself up to doing a lot more of those kind of lessons. Now because everything I do is based on reading, that'll actually make things, because I can send a lesson through and then we can actually look at it together and talk about the note values and talk about the way the rhythms work, and I think that will make life a lot easier. So I think that's what I do. I've got plenty of spaces for. We can always make time to get lessons in. So yeah.
Good, mate. And if you're a gamer, if you like Epic Space, when you have game with Epic and get drum lessons at the same time, the same day, yeah, mate, 2 for 1.
Because once again, you can always ask you can always ask me anything you like about stuff like that, anything you want to know about painting or anything. I'll talk to you about it as part of the lesson time. The one thing I would say, this is really important, is that don't think you have to have a drum kit to have drum lessons. Or Josh and I are talking about that. His lad had a chance to do some playing on a drum kit, and the guy who was there said to Josh, you ought to get him a drum kit. Actually, I would say that's the last thing Josh should be doing. Josh should be getting lessons with a really, really good teacher, because buying a drum set is a massive commitment for someone who might try a few lessons, and you tried lessons with different teachers or whatever, but could very easily try a few lessons and in the end might do it for a few weeks and go, not bothered. I mean, when I started playing, my mum said to me, I'm not buying you a drum kit unless you've had drum lessons first.
Yeah.
And then I'll buy you a kit. I'll happily buy you a kit then, but I want to know you're committed.
Yeah.
And so I had 6 months where and they were great drum lessons, where I did that, and I had nothing but a pair of sticks in the back of the book, and I did that. And at the end of that time, my mum bought me my first drum kit, and I joined band. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So you don't need a kit to learn how to play. That certainly is. I mean, obviously, as the more you get into it, you will want a set of drums.
Yeah.
You want that, but you don't have to have it start. It's much better to learn the nuts and bolts of how to play and how to read and how rhythms work and different feels and timings and stuff like that. Time signature. Much easier to start at something achievable. But you don't have to make a big financial commitment. So the commitment is the price of the lesson. So, and we can talk about that if you can't.
All right, that's very good advice. Yeah, I think that's probably one thing that goes through people's minds is that, oh my God, I need to buy the big drum kit. You know, that's a huge, like I say, huge investment. You don't need to.
Oh,
So yeah, if you need any advice, please get in touch with Adi about that. And he can get you on the right course of learning drums, which is a great idea. Music and learning music and playing instruments is a wonderful thing, especially for kids to develop it. Obviously, as adults as well, it's nice. It's a nice little escape. So thanks, mate, for all that. That's wonderful. Now, just to give people an idea of the vicinity where you are in the UK, just in case there could be someone out there who might be interested and maybe want to get in contact with you, can you tell us which city or which area?
Oh yes, I live in Clarendon Park in Leicester, but I normally teach about within a 5 miles radius of there, roughly. But like I said, I'll also do lessons online. For example, what I have done with people occasionally is I've gone and done one lesson face to face to get to know each other, and then after that, we've done we've done lessons. I've done them remotely after that. But you know, that's a way of doing that. I might start off with an introduction, and then and then do it online after that. So that seems to work quite well. And then touch base every now and again. That seems to work too. So.
All right, so we just got a good little comment here from Colonel Billington. The White Dwarf band should have been Graham Warlord on drums, Andy C on lead, Mike McVeigh on bass, Roman Juice vocals, and harmonica.
Well, that sounds fairly accurate, actually. Funnily enough, on the subject of Robin Juice, he actually he is a musician himself and has recorded stuff.
Really?
And he got some home recording equipment and did a load of demos of stuff that he wrote over the years and recorded them. They were good. Sounded great. Got a good voice.
Wow. So many men of many different talents, really, isn't it? So
coming from someone who also sings as well as playing drums, which is me. I do that. Sorry, sometimes I say stuff and I realise, you're not explaining yourself, are you? You really add that extra bit in. You look like a prat, but it doesn't matter. They'll love you anyway. Maybe. Anyway.
Okay, mate. So people who are interested, I'll get them to maybe email you is probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah, or whatever way suits. The one thing I would say is if I don't get back, means that if for example you tried messaging me through Messenger or something, because I've had people try to do that, and unless you're friends with somebody, it can be quite difficult to message people. And the one thing I would say is if you don't get an answer, just try another way. A Discord, for example, might be quite a good one, but I'm usually fairly contactable. Email's pretty good. And my email address, by the way, is drummerwarrior, all one word, at gmail.com, and you can email me directly using that. That's no problem.
Okay, so when the video goes up after we finish today, I'll ask Adi to send me all the links, and I'll stick them in the show notes, so you can always go back and check those out and go from there. So, Adi, one last question, mate, for you. Were you involved in this beautiful book, The Space Ring Battles, White Dwarf Presents?
It was. I wasn't, unfortunately. I think that was before my before my time of actually. The other thing is that the book would have been produced by the book production department, and I came into book production after I was with White Dwarf about 5 years. I then went into book production. That would have been way. It's a great book, but then but those battle reports that are in there have been in White Dwarf anyway. So
yeah, I've got to say this is my favorite book. I know it's part of White Dwarf magazine, but yeah, this is my tome of just pleasure and leisure, just looking through all the wonderful articles and everything about it. It's just awesome. And of course, I don't have all the White Dwarves, that had articles contained in here, so it's nice, just a nice resource. And I really enjoy the Chronicles of War one, like this one here. We're going through our patrons about this one, the Gathering of Might, that you're involved with, of course, as well.
Yeah, that was the first battle report photography I ever did was in that. There's a funny story. If you actually look, you will notice that on some of the photographs there's a funny little kind of seam running down the middle of the photographs, and that was because we turned the board the wrong way round, so you could see the seam. If you had to turn it another way, and then you couldn't see this seam in the board. So they were all the way through, and they didn't they didn't Photoshop any of that stuff out because they weren't using Photoshop then. So it was funny. I remember Robin having a laugh about it and saying, "Oh, I can see we didn't notice at the time, but there's this seam." And like, oops. So nobody noticed, and it just said we need to make sure that we turn the board round so we don't see those in the shot.
That reminds me, because I was looking through the Battle of Anaryl's Tomb. I know that was the first one you covered with Gary Morley and Robin Dews, and it's this one here that I noticed the seams. I was looking at it today.
Yeah.
You can see on here, but you can see the seams on the board, and I thought that's unusual because I've never seen seams in the photographs, and now that you said it, now you know why. So there you go.
That's why. That's the little bit of history.
Yeah.
And like I said, because we weren't dealing with scans back then, we were producing like transparencies of the pictures that we would then send to the printers, and they would scan them in and put them in position. And it was literally, and it was only when the magazine was printed we suddenly looked, went, oh crap, look, because we didn't even, I don't think we even noticed when we got because when we got the print, we got the you get a thing called a chromalin, which is like a rough print off of what's going to be sent out to be printed. And I can't remember if we even noticed then, or if we did, we kind of went, oh, we can't do anything about it. Let's just get this off to the printers. I can't quite remember.
Right. Well, that's interesting. It's really interesting you brought that up, and that I sort of just looked at it today. I was just looking at it today, so that's really nice. That it sort of correlated all together right today. So that's wonderful, mate. Look, we're going to have to end it today. I think my big boss, my Grand Warlord, is about to come home in her battle wagon.
Yeah.
I better go downstairs and get some stuff sorted out. So, mate, thank you so much again, Adi. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined the stream, everyone who contributed with their questions, and please contact Adi about the drum lessons. Come and chat with him on Discord with us. It'd be great,
Talk to me. I'll talk to anybody about anything. I'm more than happy to do that. If people are interested and want to talk, like I said, I am very open. If I can't talk about something, I'll say, because I generally don't like to mention names, particularly of people who were highly unpleasant that I worked with. I don't really like to talk about that or like to name them, although I really well could. I actually would prefer not to name, but I will pretty much talk about anything, because it's like things like just even the nuts and bolts of, like I said, about design and things like that I find really interesting.
Yeah,
so about anything really.
Great. I hope I'm in that chat room when you're talking about that, because it'd be just nice for me to just listen to that conversation, mate. So, Adi, thank again, mate. I really appreciate it. From all us at Crown of Command and all your fans, mate, really appreciate everything you've done and things you continue to do in the hobby. So, mate, just keep putting those epic models together. We want to see those photographs, please.
I need to start photographing this stuff. I
Please
need
do.
to get that done. I need to at least make a start on it. Just got to get around to just doing it.
And
there's a ton of it. There's just a ton of it. So
yeah, we really want to see it, mate. We want to love to see your collection. And I was going to suggest, just because I know you got your YouTube channel for your drumming, just make another one, a sister channel for your hobby. And that way you might be doing a vlog about all your armies and you can film them quickly and just do some short videos or whatever. And it'd be nice just to have as like for yourself, like myself, you know, I started the Crown of Command channel because it's like a diary, or if you like, or a...
oh yeah, the idea is a really good one. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like my Instagram page when it comes to is pretty much chock full of photographs of me practicing drumming. I mean, a lot of people misunderstand what those clips are. They kind of like, "What's this? What are you doing here?" And you completely miss the point. This is me. You know, I always said to my students that, you know, if you find it difficult finding time to practice, it's like I do too. But I practice too. Even though I've been playing a long time, I still study. I still practice. I'm still figuring out songs and figuring out rhythms and figuring out stuff. That doesn't change. And any drum teacher who acts like they've got it all together and they know what it's like, it's not true. It's like, you know, everyone always should be studying all the time. I'm an eternal student. I really am.
Yeah, no, it's good advice, mate. Good advice. I never really caught on to that until like 30 years later after school. So I'm sort of a late learner. But yeah, that's right. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. It's a great attitude, I think, for life.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, my friend. Well, thank you so much again. Okay, and
terrific.
Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your lessons, drum lessons today.
I've got two this afternoon, so I'm looking forward to them.
Good on you. Okay, mate. Right, okay, we'll speak again soon in the future. Take care, mate.
See you later. Yeah. Bye.